Don't forget, you can reach the latest episode of Potomac Watch anytime. Just ask your smart speaker, play the Opinion Potomac Watch podcast.
From the opinion pages of the Wall Street Journal, this is Potomac Watch.
Welcome back. Monet, a final thought here on what might change these colleges' behavior is I wonder if there's any movement yet by students, by parents, in terms of which colleges they want to look at, which colleges they think would provide a place where they can get an education and a focus on education that many prospective students and parents actually want. It has been fascinating to see the analyses of the colleges that had protests and encampments versus measures of college eliteness, such as affordability, what percentage of students get Pell Grants, for example. It is really these elite colleges where these things have been taking place, and that makes a sort of intuitive sense, at least to me. A lot of kids at state schools, they're there to get a degree, they're there to get an education, they're there to get a job. They don't have the time and the wherewithal to be diverted from that task to sit on the quad for some sort of weeks while they're not paying attention to the classes, not really doing the studies they need to do to get good grades and get the credential. And so the longer that these protests go on, I wonder if there's going to be any sort of shift. And I grant that a lot of these institutions at the very top, the Ivy Leagues, could lose a pretty good share of their applicants and still get high quality students, enough to fill a class, enough to fill a dorm. But Monet, it will be interesting to watch if these protests continue this fall, whether maybe in the class of 2025 or 2026 coming in, there are any changes in where students choose to go.
Well, I used to be a skeptic that such a shift would be possible. It was my sense that these elite colleges have such incredible reputational capital and that people have such unwavering belief in their ability to plant their children into the elite strata of American society that they could get away with just about anything. And we've obviously seen that with the rise of tuition over the past couple of generations. It seemed like there's no limit to what parents are willing to pay or have their children borrow to attend these schools. And we've seen it with the derangement politically that these schools have undergone within the past couple generations also. It's not just protests, but the toxic environment in the classroom in terms of what's being taught to students, and it seemed to have no effect on the applications. They were getting more and more with every passing year, including from a lot of families who you'd think would be skeptical of these trends on campuses. And yet, I think just over the course of the past couple years, we finally have seen signs that parents and students are starting to question whether there's enough value to warrant their investment in attending these colleges. Harvard's number of applications actually dropped last year, and that is a huge change. It seemed as if it was only ever going up and their admittance rate was only ever going down. We finally saw the number of applications actually drop, and I believe that that was repeated at a few other elite colleges too. I think it probably has not to do only with the protests, but also with the handling of COVID. That was one of the big shocks to a lot of Americans, to see how these schools were willing to completely shut down campus life for years and years and deprive their students of the opportunity to gain a good education for themselves. And so I do think that we're starting to see, for a lot of reasons, with the protests only being the first and foremost among them, people questioning the value proposition of these schools. And we'll see how far that goes and whether other universities, like you said, public universities, particularly in more conservative regions, are able to make an alternative case and to attract people who are becoming skeptical of the value of elite education.
Bill, we give you the last word, but I will commend this report in Washington Monthly from June to listeners. The headline is, "Are Gaza protests happening mostly at elite colleges?" And there are some nice graphs here charting which schools had protests and encampments. Here's one line. Out of the hundreds of private colleges where more than 25% of the students receive Pell Grants, only 5 colleges have had encampments. And so, Bill, if some of these institutions get a reputation as places where students go and they get degrees in campus protest, maybe it will take a while for that to filter through to employers and then back to the administration buildings and the admissions offices. But I can't imagine it won't eventually filter back there.
Yeah, I'd like to have more faith in that. An elite college degree is worth it because it's elite in terms of job contacts and giving you kind of a step ahead when you put in a resume. Someone from like Columbia just has an advantage when the employer reads it and thinks, well, they're smarter than the other guys. So I don't think that's going to change so much, but the willingness of some parents to pay for it, I think that's changing. I mean, I've been horrified. I grew up in the New York area. I went to public high school. Some of my Jewish classmates went to Columbia, has a strong Jewish heritage. You know, a lot of scholars and everything made Columbia their home. And of course, New York is the largest Jewish city outside Israel. And you think if it happens here, this is the last place it would happen. You know, these are the things, the images come to mind, the pre-civil rights South with the Ku Klux Klan, but it's the most elite parts. The college presidents and the faculty are not just feckless. In many cases, they're endorsing it. They believe that the protesters have the moral case on their side, and they don't mind what they're doing. And that's really appalling. And I think fixing that is the work of generations.
Thank you, Bill and Monet. Thank you all for listening. You can email us at pwpodcast@wsj.com. If you like the show, please hit that subscribe button, and we'll be back tomorrow with another edition of Potomac Watch.